I know you've all heard of the 10 Commandments. Well, it has been said that Unitarian Universalists offer instead the 10 suggestions, or at most, the 7 principles. Those 7 principles do not come pre-assembled. There's some work involved more than once, and they are subject to change. But that's what it means to be a religious liberal. You give up the anchor of absolutes and predictability. You covenant with others in this UU fellowship to conduct your own personal, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And you share that individual quest along the way, revealing your developing ideas and faith to other searching, caring friends who will support you as you support them. That is what we're about here. So how do you talk about God when you've given up the anchor of absolutes? Well, I'll tell you. You use I statements. You speak of your own personal experience. You tell your own stories. Individual authenticity and the art of theology are very compatible bedfellows. Here's a snapshot or two of the ways we Unitarian Universalists approach this question of God, because it isn't in our nature to supply the absolute answer. Did you know that our UU American founders were, by and large, deists, which refers to a belief in God and only one God? And of those, many identified themselves as Unitarian. Thomas Jefferson was a deist and a Unitarian, or at least one whose philosophy was decidedly Unitarian. Let me define deism first. The deist concept of the divine was as a non-interventionist God who had created the universe and then backed off and allowed us and it to run according to nature's laws. Jesus was not thought of as God. Unitarian deism was written about in the Washington Post. A J.S. White of Sterling, Virginia, wrote to the editors to point out an error in an article that called deism a form of Christianity. In fact, Mr. White wrote, deism was to a large extent a rejection of Christianity. Mr. White wrote that deism did not adhere to such Christian concepts as the divinity of Christ, supernatural mythology, or original sin. Deism was a product of the Enlightenment, and it held humankind in higher regard, and did most practicing Christians. Quoting him again, the author said, its closest religious descendant is Unitarianism, and it has much more in common with secular humanism than with most of today's Christian sects. That was a snapshot of those early American Unitarian deists. Excuse me. Not a cold, just whatever. Allergy. Okay, that was a snapshot of those early American Unitarian deists with their particular liberal view of divinity and humanity, and upon whose values our country was founded. Historical tidbit number 2 is about a well-known Unitarian, Ralph Waldo Emerson. His philosophy of transcendentalism, a quite new way of the 19th century of perceiving the essence of God, is still alive and well in the hearts and minds of many contemporary Unitarian Universalists. In an article titled Ralph Waldo Emerson's Zen Universalism, the author, Soiku Shigematsu, compares Emerson's philosophy to Eastern philosophy, in particular Zen Buddhism. Emerson changed Unitarianism. For the first time, he questioned the external, removed, distant God of the deists. He spoke instead of an internal and immanent God, beginning a major shift in the perception and idea of God for UUs. The author first tells us of a famous Chinese Zen master who always admonished his students, don't seek truth outside yourself. Then the author compares what a Zen master said in response to something Emerson said. Each owes all to the discovery that God must be sought within, not without. Both are saying that ultimate truth resides in each person. Emerson went on to say, standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing, I see all. All the currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am part and parcel of God. 18th century deism and 19th century Emersonian mysticism, or Zen Universalism, were both parts of the God picture of much of today's Unitarian Universalism. With the 20th century, the Unitarian idea of God shifted yet again. Unitarianism turned to humanism, a self-reliant philosophy that embraces agnostics and atheists. And later in the 20th century, other new ways of thinking about God, or the ultimate truth, have had a profound effect on UU values and practice as well. Well, for one thing, there was the feminist movement, which brought God under the microscope to reveal a patriarchal, hierarchical concept that kept women devalued and demeaned. Feminists, and I was one of those then, questioned our use of gender-exclusive language, particularly in God language, no more he, that created the male as the standard of humanity and divinity. New Age hopes, feminism, and a growing ecological awareness of the independence of all existence helped usher in a strong, renewed interest in older spiritual insights found in paganism, Wicca, and Native American spirituality. As spirituality became a word to be reckoned with for the last several decades, the practice of faith for Unitarian Universalists has undergone an observable change. As a result of such changes, the idea for God for Unitarian Universalists is up in the air, so to speak. We now experience and espouse many names and many ideas of God, and many ways of understanding concepts of the unifying principle of life. For me, thinking about God means thinking about metaphors. The meaning of life, death, and divinity is a mystery that can only be approached through metaphor. For years, women's experience was discounted, so we also looked to an ever wider range of images of God. For God that could evoke surprising and more rewarding forms. Here is Audre Lorde. It's a poem that is a feminist view of God, and I rather fancy it. Plentiful sacrifice and believers in redemption are all that is needed, so any day now I expect some new religion to rise like tear grass from the streets of New York, erupting like a rank pavement smell released by the garbage truck's baptismal drizzle. The high priests have been ready and waiting with their incense pans full of fire. I do not know the rituals, the exaltations, nor what name of God the servers will worship. I only know she will be terrible and very busy and very old. God, or ultimate truth, or the ground of being, brings us to the issue of trust. In what do I place my trust? Wherever my trust resides, there resides also whatever we name or perceive of as God. It is the nub of health. Faith, health too. To trust someone or something isn't always a totally rational act. Now take this well-known Zen observation. It's really quite wonderful. Quote, "Spring comes and the grass grows all by itself." The statement shows us the wisdom of letting go, to trying to control everything, and to enter into creation as an act of becoming. Now there's trust. To live wholeheartedly in the moment is a pure act of trust. I've been struggling with trust for a long time. I am optimistic and generally a hopeful person, but I'm also skeptical about authority and tend to question everything. Even when I've achieved a certain amount of trust in a person or an idea, it's never 100% to the point of submission. I have no personal experience of divinity, yet I believe that I can lean into the universe with a question and need only to maintain a conscious, grateful receptivity to realize that answers come. There is a craziness of my theology. I did that more of the time when I was younger. I was together and at the same time a rational skeptic who questioned everything, and a mystic who expected to receive answers from no reliable or apparent source. Do you know anyone like that? The spirituality began to develop within me. I have always called it art and poetry. But that doesn't matter. Paths are paths. The path itself is what matters. You learn on the labyrinth, which is literally a path. The UU church I served in Arlington, Virginia, as a minister, has a labyrinth. In fact, I'm the one who brought them the labyrinth. After a sabbatical leave in 1994. Oh, I wish I was that young again. It is an ancient spiritual tool, a winding path utilizing a type of walking meditation. And the Arlington Labyrinth is a 35-foot diameter circular pattern painted on a wider canvas floor cloth. We could fill this whole room with it. It's a replica of the 11th Circuit Labyrinth that was built into the stone floor of the Chartres Cathedral in France in medieval times. Christians who couldn't make the trip to the Holy Land would come to the church and on their knees enter the curving path of the labyrinth that went this way and that way. I went to San Francisco on the sabbatical, and I found out all about it, and brought the thought of creating one of our own to the Arlington church folks, and we started with 30 people. I used to walk the labyrinth a lot. Oh, God, I loved it. It became an important place and practice in my spiritual development. I learned that the present moment on the path with whomever is there, contains all the meaning in the world. Now that's downright mystical talk for a rational, skeptical humanist like me. Just shows you how leaky labels can be. But I only go so far with a mystical idea, and then my reason crashes through with a caution. And I only go so far with my logic, and then my intuition crashes through with a caution. Arguments about the use of the word God themselves are a fool's errand. We are not the land of definitions. God has more to do with feelings and intuition for me, and it has to do with realities or names and definitions. God or goddess or the ground of being is a so-called reality beyond reality. The word of choice is one of those crossover points between logic and intuition. It seems to be true that all of us need a central point to hold on to reach out from. We need something to trust that is larger than us, our own life, yet encompassing of it. We need to create some sort of inner guide that we love and trust, walk hand in hand with. Perhaps the love comes first, and then the trust, and then the experience of connectedness to all. Some people name that God. I think one gets in trouble when one names something like this. If I would be able to ask each one of you right now what you believe God to be for you in your life, the range of answers would be stunning. I know it, and that pleases me enormously. The holiness of this house is felt in its wide rooms designed to hold a variety of beliefs. And I say holiness with no trepidations. This is a sacred and consecrated space in which we can safely speak of our own developing faith. If we bring here what we have learned to sincerely trust in our lives, then we are on holy ground. I told you I was going to speak in metaphors. I am not a theist. I am a humanist who feels an inner wisdom of poetry and who sees the richness of language as a fertile field in which to grow ideas and inspiration. Brother David Steindl-Rast, a Benedictine monk, anchors the term God in a mystical awareness of connectedness. He has written, "In my best, most alive moments, in my mystical moments, I have profound sense of belonging. At those moments, I am aware of being truly at home in this universe. This is no longer any doubt in my mind that I belong to this earth household in which each member belongs to all others. Bug to beavers, black-eyed Susan to black holes, quarks to quails, lightning to fireflies, humans to hyenas. To say yes to this limitless mutual belonging is love. When I speak of God, I mean this kind of love, this great yes to belonging." This is not so far off the Unitarian Universalist principle in which we talk about the deep, quotes, "the deep and abiding interdependence of all life," unquote. It implies such an intimate sense of belonging that a rich and compassionate ethical sense grows out of it. An ethics that is involved in the consequences of freedom and respect for all that exists. Steindl-Rast also exists. How does God speak? He answers, through everything there is. Each moment, with all that it contains, spells out the great yes of a new and unique way. That is why wakefulness, mindfulness, is so preeminent a task. God's inexhaustible, poetry comes to me in 5 languages: sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. All the rest is interpretation. Some of us agree, excuse me, another little sniffle, where is that? When I talk, it tends to get worse. Some of us would agree that when we pay attention to the world around us and the people around us, when our senses are intentionally cultivated to receive the details and the fullness of life, then we can experience a wider range of input that we normally allow. That expansiveness invites a sense of awe. We are more deeply moved as life as we experience it. We open up to deeper religious and spiritual perceptions. Stephen Levine, author and counselor who works with the terminally ill, says that he is very comfortable with the word God because he doesn't have the foggiest idea what it means. But, he writes, I see no place that it is absent. Indeed, it may be that God cannot be known in the mind, but only experienced in the heart. You cannot know God, you can only be God. You cannot know the truth, but only enter directly the moment in which truth resides. God is the direct experience of our true nature, just as the flower is the direct experience of the miracle of germination and color and the indescribable beauty of simply being. In a sense, there is no such thing as going home to God. We are already in the living room. Again, what he said is not so far from our religious philosophy that understands through practice inherent value on the individual human person and a clearly stated recognition that all existence is interdependent and connected, that humans are co-creators with life. We cannot go home to life. We are living it, and it is living us. We make choices about how fully to live our lives. Unitarian Universalists are big on having choices. And that is the essence of our freedom, intelligence, and intuition. That is where theology grows. That is where trust grows. Read about God. Learn to listen to others who have a clear image of God in their hearts and minds. Know the history of God. Learn about goddesses, of course. Absorb all the philosophy and psychology and poetry about God, and then drop the damn word. Take it away. Peel off the label. Discard the names. Discard the names others give this mystery. And what will be left? Perhaps sitting there quietly inside you will be what you love and trust. May it be so.